It was a really bad year down in Starkville for Mississippi State and first-year head coach Jeff Lebby. But I would say they actually met expectations. Look, nobody was expecting Mississippi State to compete in the SEC last year. Lebby did not inherit that great of a program, had a lot of issues that he needed to fix. This was supposed to be a very down year for the Bulldogs, and that's exactly what happened as they went 2-10. Now entering 2025, no one's expecting them to be a contender in the conference again. It still feels like another rebuilding year as he continues to lay a foundation and build a culture in Starkville. But in theory, the Bulldogs will be more competitive. Maybe they'll win a few more games. And then next year could be the breakthrough year in Stark Vegas. You take a look at what happened last year for the Bulldogs. Again, 2-10. They did have signs of promise, right? They had a 7-point loss to Arizona State early in the year. They rallied hard. They were down 27-3, made it respectable. Arizona State, we didn't know it at the time, but they ended up winning the Big 12 and probably should have beat Texas in the college football playoff. They did lose 41-17 at home to Toledo. That's probably the biggest low point of the season for Mississippi State. But then they held their own against some of the conference's elites. They only lost by 10 to Georgia, only by 10 to Texas A&M, only by 12 to Ole Miss. So all in all, they showed signs of brilliance, and they did a lot of that without Blake Shapen. Shapen was off to a phenomenal start in Jeff Lebby's offense before he got hurt for the year. He had completed 74 passes on 108 attempts at 68.5% for 974 yards, 8 touchdowns, and 1 interception. He was hot early in the year. I don't think he leads the Bulldogs to a bowl game. I don't think he leads them to any massive upsets or anything. But maybe they get a win or two. Maybe they beat Toledo. Maybe they beat Texas A&M, who they hung with. I don't know. But Shapen was off to a great start. Now he's back fully healthy. 9 starters back for the Bulldogs this year. Their leading rusher, David Booth, also returned. 759 rushing yards last year, along with 5 touchdowns. Wide receiver Jordan Mosley returns. Tight end Seydou Traore returns, and they should have a significantly stronger offensive line after giving up 38 sacks last year. So with a fully healthy quarterback who was supposed to be the starter last year, was looking really good, veteran running backs and veteran pass catchers, an improved offensive line, this is a Mississippi State offense that should see a huge jump in the numbers, especially with the Jeff Lebby-led offense. Defensively, that was a major issue for the Bulldogs last year. 7 starters are back after giving up over 34 points per game, over 456 yards per game. That'd be really bad. 456 yards per game. That includes 217 rushing yards per game. So they were horrendous up front defensively last year. The Bulldogs allowed over 200 rushing yards in half of their games. Over 200 rushing yards in 6 of the 12 games that they played. They allowed over 300 rushing yards to Arizona State and Arkansas. So they've got to fix that if they want to be competitive in 2025. And they do have some talent that I think can help fix that. Isaac Smith returned after leading the team in tackles with 127 tackles in 2024. 3 more of the top 5 tacklers from last year do return. The defensive line's got to improve significantly. They only had 10 sacks last year, but guys like Jamil Burroughs coming in from Miami should help those numbers a little bit and should help the rushing defense numbers as well. Their sack leaders, Zachary Tillman returns after posting 3.5 sacks, so over 30% of the sacks last year came from Tillman alone. In the linebacking core, he's paired with Nick Mitchell, who was 3rd on the team in tackles. The secondary should improve, adding 5 transfers through the portal after a secondary that only had 5 interceptions last year. All in all, Mississippi State, just like the offense, should improve defensively. I would expect the offensive numbers to improve a lot more than the defense. But again, this is a much better team, a much more experienced team than they had in Lebby's first year, and that should translate to better stats and being a lot more competitive. You take a look at the schedule. It's tough. I mean, that's life in the SEC. We've said that a lot throughout these SEC predictions, and especially for the lower level teams, maybe a Mississippi State, a Kentucky, maybe even a Vanderbilt, who does have experience this year. They're not going to be expected to be able to compete with the big dogs, maybe not even with some of the middle of the pack teams. That first game at Southern Miss for the Bulldogs is one they cannot afford to overlook. This is a Southern Miss team that if you look at what happened last year, you go, oh, God, they were horrible. The Bulldogs should blow them out. This isn't the same Southern Miss team. This is practically Marshall. This is practically Marshall in Mississippi. Marshall head coach Charles Huff. Charles Huff led Marshall to the Sun Belt Championship last year, won the conference last year. He is now the head coach at Southern Miss. And he practically brought along with him everybody from that Marshall team that won the Sun Belt Conference. right? Pretty much brought so many people with him from Marshall that the Thundering Herd couldn't even play in their bowl game last year. They didn't have enough players. So Marshall had to opt out of their bowl game and they had to be replaced by Louisiana Tech, who Army promptly beat. So regardless, this Southern Miss team is not your typical team that is kind of rebuilding from such a down year. This is a very experienced team with a dang good head coach, and the Bulldogs have to go on the road to face them. So do not be surprised if this game is close. Do not be surprised if Mississippi State loses this game. I don't think they will. But I do think it's going to be closer than maybe some would expect. Some would say maybe closer than it should be. But again, if you're just looking at the stats from last year, you're doing yourself a disservice because this Southern Miss team is nothing like that. Mississippi State is 1-0, but watch out. Arizona State, how about that? The Bulldogs get to host the reigning Big 12 champions. I don't think anybody saw that coming at this time last year, but this Sun Devils team is the real deal, even without Cam Scatterbo. Last year, Cam Scatterbo put up 262 rushing yards by himself against this Mississippi State defense, which again was horrendous against the run. He's now gone, but Sam Leavitt returns. Jordan Tyson returns. They're loaded on defense with 9 starters back. 17 total starters back for Arizona State this year. This is a completely different team, playing with a lot more confidence. And again, a team that is really dang good. We didn't know that at the time these two teams played last year. Mississippi State's rally fell short and they lost 30-23. But Arizona State is going to be a top 15 team at this point. They're going to be favored heavily, and I don't think Mississippi State has enough to pull off this win, even with it being at home. Great opportunity for them, but they fall short against a very good team out of the Big 12. They win their next two against Alcorn State in Northern Illinois, so they're 3-1, and they have now exceeded last year's win total. Again, they probably would have hit 3 wins last year if they hadn't lost by 24 at home to Toledo, but still. 3 wins now. 3-1 for the Bulldogs. They've shown improvement. I think they're competitive against Arizona State, by the way, for what it's worth. Now they enter conference play, and it is brutal. I mean, it really, really is. I mean, Tennessee, at A&M, at Florida. They draw Texas and Georgia, just like they did last year. At Missouri, and then, of course, the Egg Bowl against Ole Miss. Look, I will go fast here. I don't think Mississippi State wins a single conference game. So they're going to lose out, and they'll finish the year at 3-9. And we can go quick hitters on all these. They lost to Tennessee 33-14 last year. Fun that this will be the first game between these two teams in Starkville since 2012. Just shows how crazy the cross-division lineups were when the SEC was split into divisions. First game in Starkville for the Volunteers since 2012, but the Volunteers have too good of a defense. I think the offense has figured things out by this point in the year with Joey Aguilar and some new guys at running back and at wide receiver. Again, I think Mississippi State puts up a decent fight early on, but that Tennessee defense does wear them down. That is the strength of this team. So they lose to the Volunteers. They are not winning in College Station against a very good A&M team that is loaded everywhere. They've got a veteran, experienced quarterback in Marcel Reed who kind of busted onto the scene last year, did really well. Going to take a bigger step forward now with the whole offseason knowing he's the starter. You got a loaded running back room. Not good for Mississippi State, who struggled at stopping the run. And the defense, that might be one of the best in the conference this year. Factor in College Station, one of the most difficult places to play in the country, and Mississippi State will not win. They go on the road to Florida after that. Another very difficult place to play. They have not won at Florida since 2010. 17-1 all-time in the Swamp. They lost to the Gators in Starkville 45-28 last year, and this Florida team is better than they were last year. They will not win in the Swamp. They, of course, will not beat Texas, who they lost to 35-13 last year. Could have been a lot worse. They held their own, kind of controlled the clock a little bit, but this Texas team, a true national title contender, they're going to have enough to come on the road to Starkville and get the win. Go on the road to Arkansas. They won there 2 years ago in one of the worst games I've ever watched, a 7-3 win for the Bulldogs. Last year, though, Arkansas walked into Starkville, walked away with a 58-25 win. The Razorbacks posted 673 yards of offense, 359 of those yards coming on the ground. Arkansas averaged nearly a first down every time they touched the ball. 9.7 yards per carry last year against Mississippi State. They do return their veteran dual-threat quarterback in Taylor Green. They do have a very underrated running back core once again. In Fayetteville, I don't think the Bulldogs have enough. Arkansas gets the win. They will get destroyed by Georgia. They held their own against the Bulldogs last year, scored some touchdowns in the second half to make it look respectable. Only lost 41-31, but again, not enough against this Georgia team, who again is a national title contender and loaded on both sides of the ball. On the road at Missouri, they lost to them 39-20 last year. They've got a dual-threat quarterback now in Bo Perbula. I think they get better on offense as the year goes on, and the Tigers kind of like Tennessee, like a couple other teams we mentioned, has a really good defense. That's going to be the strength of their team. Going on the road now against that Missouri team, just don't see it happening. They lose that game. Coming out of the bye week, they take on Ole Miss in the 120th Egg Bowl. But Mississippi State is 1-4 at home against Ole Miss in their last 5 Egg Bowl meetings there. They have lost to them 26-14 last year, allowing over 250 rushing yards on the day. They held their own. I think they hold their own again this year. I think if Blake Shapen can stay healthy, they're going to be competitive in the majority of the games they play. I think they're competitive at home against Ole Miss. Jeff Lebby, former offensive coordinator for Ole Miss, looking to get a win over Lane Kiffin, knows how much that game means to both these programs, but especially the Bulldogs. Not going to have enough. I still don't think their defense is to the point yet to slow down this high-octane Ole Miss offense that, yes, loses Jackson Dart, loses some wide receivers, but will be just fine with Austin Simmons at the helm. The Ole Miss defense is going to be better than people realize with the transfer portal additions that Lane Kiffin brought in. Again, I think this game is probably decided by about 10 to 14 points, relatively similar to what we saw last year, but the Bulldogs still fall just short, and they finish 3-9, 0-8 in conference play. Maybe fans are upset about that. Again, I ask you, point to me a win on the schedule. Where do you get it? Where do you get a conference win? I mean, seriously, Tennessee? Let's do this. They're not going to win a road game. I don't think they're going to be A&M, Florida, Arkansas, which could someone say is winnable, but not. I really don't think so. A&M, Florida, Arkansas, Missouri. I don't think they win any of those. They're not going to beat Texas. They're not going to beat Georgia. So it really comes down to Tennessee, Arizona State, Ole Miss. Even if you win all 3, you're just 6-6. We know that's not going to happen. This is not a bowl team by any means. This is a year where the Bulldogs will improve statistically. They will improve competitively. They will give their fan base and their players that they retain some faith and some hope and some optimism heading into 2026. That could be the year that Jeff Lebby breaks through and get the Bulldogs back to the postseason. We always say you got to give a new coach 3 or 4 years to hit their stride. This is only year 2 for Lebby and Starkville. I think they're much better next year. Better in some categories this year. Next year's the big one. 3-9, another winless year in conference play for the Bulldogs, though, in 2025. So guys, as always, thank you so much for watching us here at the Gridiron Expert on YouTube. Make sure to continue to like, comment, subscribe, share our videos, and check out everything down in the description below. That includes our website, thegridironexpert.com, home to our expert picks, which are some of the best college football and NFL spread picks in the entire country. Do not miss out on those. The link for it over on thegridironexpert.com down in the description below, along with our weekly newsletters, which will give you some non-stop exclusive content that you won't get anywhere else. Go take advantage of it, again, down over on thegridironexpert.com. And once again, as always, thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you next time right here on The Gridiron Expert.
Yeah.